everyone, how's it going? Desi's here with another piece of content. Today I'm going to be talking about EverQuest once again through the lens of the social aspect of it. If you're new to the game, or if you're returning, or even if you're just playing right now and you're kind of looking for a different perspective of the social elements of EverQuest and what version of it may be best suited for you and your playstyle, I'm going to kind of briefly talk about some of the main ways of playing EverQuest and my own opinion on the social dynamics of it, for better or for worse, when comparing these versions of the same game that we all love. So I would like to start with Live EverQuest. EverQuest up to its most current expansion, Lorien's Song. All in all, I think this is probably not the least social, especially if you're in the endgame and you're raiding, but it's definitely really difficult to kind of make your way into the social dynamics of the game, especially with the use of mercenaries being such a prevalent and honestly necessary component to leveling up in Live EverQuest. The game in and of itself is very top heavy. These players have been playing on these servers for over 25 years, some of them, and so with that they're going to have 25 years of experience, 25 years of loot, 25 years of platinum, achievements, mounts, all of these things that kind of create a division between new players and the veterans that have been there since day one. And I think you're going to find that in any MMO that you play, especially Live EverQuest, since it's just been around for so long chronologically. It's just going to be a difficult time to really cement social relationships, in my opinion, unless you're lucky. And I'm sure there's a lot of leveling and casual friendly guilds out there, especially like family and leveling guilds. In my experience playing on Live, those were the best guilds to join because everyone isn't trying to race to the end. Everyone's trying to kind of experience and have fun with the game for what it is, and just have fun with their mercenaries and leveling up in the Serpent Spine zones or just any zone that you want to play in. So it's definitely not the worst avenue for socializing, but I think it has a more difficult barrier of entry. Also, kind of to put into a different lens, with the new expansion, there's well over like 125 levels, I believe. It might be 120 levels. I'm not 100% sure right now. It's just gonna take a long time to level up to max level. And that's similar to the old versions of EverQuest, but I think with that, it's not as oversaturated as it is in Live EverQuest. One good component to Live EverQuest though is it does have general chat, which is like a universal chat where people, especially new players, can ask questions, and you don't need to be in a certain zone to talk in OOC or anything. You're able to actually communicate with anyone who's also in general chat and logged into the server. I think you can even like communicate with people from different servers if you know like a certain command to talk. So it's definitely very open with just communication. So that's a big point that classic servers don't have, like Project 1999 or Project Korm, is not having the general chat where you can always kind of be in the loop of things and have a community chat no matter what zone you're in. Moving on, I want to talk about the Timelock progressions. These are an extension of Live EverQuest, so it does require you to be playing on the current client of EverQuest, and it also requires you to be an active all-access subscriber to the game itself, which means that you're going to pay at least $15 to play on this version of the game. So there is a barrier to entry in terms of, just the financial component. But again, similar to Live EverQuest, there's a general chat. So even if you're leveling up in Classic EverQuest, if that's the most recent addition to the Timelock progression, like right when it comes out, you still have the general chat to be able to communicate and ask questions and find groups. It makes it very easy. They also have a very nice /LFG, which will automatically filter and show other people that are LFG, and as well as their customized message about maybe what kind of group they're looking for. So I think playing on the most recent Timelock progression, right now that happens to be Teak, is a very, very good method of kind of hopping back into EverQuest, having some good social connections, good groups. It has the same kind of client as Live EverQuest, so the game is simply a bit more easy and undertuned for the mobs and overtuned for the players, in comparison with some of the emulated clients, which kind of use a more original version of the game that has a few, I think, tweaks that make it a little bit more difficult for players against mobs. Again, there's a very active player base as well on Timelock progressions, especially the new ones. Teak is by far the most populated version of EverQuest to play on right now. So if you're looking for something to hop into, I think Teak is a very good choice because it's very accessible, especially with the random loot. There's a lot of players, it's easy to find groups, it's easy to level up, the experience is quick. I think it's definitely a very, very good choice for socializing the game. A big downside I have though is that there is a very cyclical nature to Timelock progressions. I personally don't get too attached to the characters I make on Timelock progressions. Because I know that I probably won't be playing on them in the next couple of years, to be honest. Like, that's just kind of how it is for me. I don't like to play on Timelock progressions and go all the way to the end. I like to kind of stick around in the beginning, maybe take a really long break from like Planes of Power to like Prophecy of Ro or something, and maybe I'll jump back in. There definitely is a fall off on Timelock progressions, so there isn't a very insulated population, I'd say, of like, you know, this is going to be around for a long time. It's going to be at this stage and people are going to actively choose to play in this community for the next 5-10 years. I'm sure there are many people who stick to a Timelock progression and go all the way to live, but I think that is an exception. I don't think that's exactly how most of the population will play. So big downfall for Timelock progressions is that although in the short run they're very, very nice and easy to socialize and progress, there is kind of a ticking clock that, you know, they won't be around in the way it is for that long, especially from Classic to Planes of Power. After that, the population's going to die off, and it's, you know, it's just a little bit more difficult. Definitely still popular. It's a random loot server, so it will be active. Definitely past Planes of Power, but please take that in mind that it's not going to be a very consistent population throughout its whole lifespan. And I don't get me started on Chronos. That's a whole nother thing, especially the tower gear in Teak. It's definitely dissuaded me from playing on it right now, but I might return to it one day. We'll see. Next, I want to move on to Project 1999. This is a very, very classic emulated server that's been around for well over 10 years. There's two versions of it. There's the blue Project 1999 server, which is the older version that came out over 10 years ago. It has a very, very founded community, and it's definitely just seen its time. It's been around the block. It's basically a museum. The greens version is the other version of Project 1999. That one came out in 2019, so it's almost 5 years old. So not as old as the blue version. The population's a bit higher on green. And there's also the red P99 server, which is a PvP version of EverQuest if you're interested in that. Personally, I'm not very much. I like the idea of it, but actually sitting down and playing on Project 1999 Red, I never do. So there's that. These servers, they are locked at Velius, so they're not going to be progressing anymore. Where they are right now is exactly where they're going to be for the rest of their lifespan until the servers shut down. Who knows when, probably not for a long time. I think with that, with the kind of museum nature of Project 1999, it has, in my opinion, a very insulated player base, which really helps in fostering long-term relationships and being a part of a community that you know is going to be there for the long haul. Most of the players that are level 60 and actively playing, they're not going away. They might take breaks for months or maybe years, but most of the people that are playing there that are actually really dedicated to the server are going to be staying there well into the entire longevity of the server itself. And I think that's a very comforting aspect of a version of EverQuest that you want to choose. For me personally, knowing that where I'm playing, what I'm doing will matter because this will be around for a long time. The progression I make right now is not going to be irrelevant or completely redundant in a year when new content's out, and where I'm at right now is just, you know, it's gone with the wind. Like, it doesn't have that FOMO aspect that I think a lot of recent video games have. A lot of newer MMOs rely on these FOMO events and expansions and all these things to get you hooked because it feels like you're missing out on something. If you're a World of Warcraft player, I'm a World of Warcraft player, but I'm kind of taking a step back from the game, especially with the new expansion coming out. I can kind of just see the manipulative nature of making it feel like you're missing out on something, or that you're going to be behind when this new thing comes out, and it makes you feel like you are inadequate, like you need to be playing because you have to keep up. And I think Project 1999 is the antithesis of that mental framework of playing a game, and it fosters the framework of playing a game because you enjoy it and you're not missing out on anything. You're just playing it because you want to play it. And I think with that, it really fosters that friendly aspect of the EverQuest community, which is the heart of EverQuest. It's like the biggest reason why people love playing the game, why I love playing the game personally, is the community aspect of it. You're going to be going to these static zones. There's no pick zone. I also want to mention for the Timelock progressions, there's something called pick zone, which is like sharding. So it'll create multiple instances of the same zone. Say you're in Lower Guck and there's like 300 people who are in Lower Guck. It'll break it into like 15 versions of the zone. So, you know, everyone can have their spot in the zone. And I think this is a great thing, especially for large populations where it's just not feasible for hundreds of people to be in these zones. You're going to be on hour-long wait lists to get into any group. It just doesn't really make sense. It wouldn't be fun. So I understand the necessity to add these pick zones, but I think it does strip away the one world community nature of EverQuest, especially compared to Project 1999. There's no pick zones. You go into a zone, that is the zone. So no matter what you get from it, that's where that world is right now. And I think something about that, especially for me, it just makes the game feel really special, and it makes it feel like my actions have a consequence on the world because I'm not in an alternate dimension of one part of the world. I'm just in the world, and I like that when I play an MMO. And this goes also as a back or a double-sided sword, a double-edged sword, because for raiding, there's no instances at all either. So if a raid mob respawns after, say, a week, there's only that one raid mob in the entire server. So guilds have agreements about rotations of what raid mobs they're gonna take out. At least to my knowledge. I've never raided it in Project 1999, but from my understanding, that's how it is. Unless there is an earthquake event where every raid mob will respawn instantaneously, so people are going to race to try to take those guys out. And that's kind of like called poop socking, where you all, like, your guild races to get to the target, and you have like an alarm clock, like a pager that lets you know, hey, you gotta log in, there's a raid mob. I never did that personally, but you know, just the stories, it's a very different way to play the game. And if you play the game like that, all the power to you. I think that's dedication to its greatest extent for gaming. But it's not for me, and I think it makes it difficult, especially if you're trying to get your like Epic 1.0, which for most classes, if not all of the classes, it requires at least one or two pieces from these raid mobs. It's going to be so difficult to try to get that into your rotation, and even get to level 60 is a feat in of itself. So getting in a guild that actually raids and gets into the rotation where this piece of loot actually drops from a mob and you actually win it, and that's just one tiny part of your epic quest, you know, it's a little bit less feasible. So it's fun, but like, don't expect to min-max, don't expect to like race to the end and get everything you want in this expansion, in this like version of the game, because it's mostly about enjoying the ride for what it is, and just, you know, smelling the roses, smelling the flowers, and taking a deep breath of Norath and just experiencing that for what it is. So next, I want to move on to the Project Lazarus emulated server. Last, I'm going to talk about Project Korm, but this is the second to last, Project Lazarus. This is a server that is very custom designed. There's a lot of custom NPCs, custom items, there's diamond coins, which is a big currency on that server. And the server also encourages the use of MQ2, which is like a botting software where it allows you to play up to 6 classes. One character you actually play, and then 5 of the characters you can automate and customize very specifically to cater to your needs in your group. So you can look at it as basically playing like a game like Baldur's Gate 3, where you're controlling a party. They're all like playing with you, like all of the companions and stuff, and you choose what companions you want to play with. You obviously play as your main character, but you're going to have these companions playing alongside of you. And I think looking at it like that, within the scope of that you're playing EverQuest as well, makes it fun in and of itself, because it's a very, very, very different way of playing the game. I think that Project Lazarus is probably the least social way of playing EverQuest. Not that there's no socializing, but definitely the least requirement of playing with other people. There's very, very easy progression. You're going to get armor very quickly. You're going to level up very quickly. But as you get up to like level 65, it definitely slows down, and the intricate designs of the server really shine, and you kind of see the beauty of Project Lazarus for what it is. It's basically its own video game. It's its own way of EverQuest that isn't EverQuest at the same time. And there's also a lot of tweaks to the game. Like for the Epic 2.0s, the server is in Almonds of War expansion, which is the expansion that the Epic 2.0s were introduced in. But for these Epic 2.0s, they actually increased the stats of them, as well as for the Epic 1.0s, to actually make them more relevant. So the developers make a lot of changes for Project Lazarus to honestly make it more intuitive for the player and to make it more kind of self-sufficient. Like there's a very, very good sense of progression on the server, and you can do it all yourself, and I think there's a very nice comfort in that. You can play very flexibly. You can log in, play for a half hour, go to Plane of Decay and kill some mobs, grind some AAs with your 6-man group, and then be done. You can log out and you're good. And there's also server-wide XP buffs. I had a lot of fun on Project Lazarus. A lot of good times, very flexible, like I said. Not a lot of socializing. I did join a guild though that the people on it were super nice. So if you're watching this video and you were in that guild on Project Lazarus, comment down below. I'd love to see your name in the comment section. But yeah, Project Lazarus is super fun. My guildies helped me run through like a Plane of Time raid. So there is raiding on the server that does require you to group with other people's groups, but I don't think it's a necessity on the server. There's a lot of guilds, very friendly community. It's EverQuest. Like, I think the beauty of EverQuest is no matter where it is, the community is going to be, for the most part, besides PvP, pretty healthy, pretty friendly. It's just a good time overall. And if you go on Project Lazarus, if you're curious, give it a shot. It's pretty fun. Now lastly, I want to talk about Project Korm. This is the server I've been putting the most time in recently, and I think honestly this is, besides Teak for just where it's at right now, being very early on, very large population, I think Project Korm is probably the best choice for just joining a version of EverQuest to socialize and make friends and join a guild. It is not as top heavy as Project 1999. It is a much more recent and young server. It is only about a year old, so there are going to be some max level players, a lot of max level players and raiders. With Kunark, the max level is 60 now, so it only came out a couple months ago, so a lot of people are still leveling to 60. Majority of the population of the server, in my opinion, is all leveling. So if you join now, you're going to be in the same boat as pretty much everyone else. Difference from this server compared to Project 1999 is this server goes up to Planes of Power instead of cutting off at Velius. So just kind of a recap of those first few expansions. You start with EverQuest Classic, then the Ruins of Kunark, and then the Scars of Velius, that's where P99 caps off, and that's also where Teak is right now, it's in Velius. And then the Shadows of Lucklin expansion comes out, which unlocks the Beast Lord class, the Vashur, or Vashir, however you want to say it, cat race, the Moon of Lucklin itself, the Nexus, I think like a new Bazaar zone opens up in Lucklin, a ton of new zones, level cap still 60. It also introduces AAs to the game, which was a game changer for just creating more customization and more enhancements of everyone's classes. So it makes the game a bit more complicated and a bit more interesting in my opinion. And then after Shadows of Lucklin, the Planes of Power expansion comes out, which basically redesigned major components of the game. It introduced the Plane of Knowledge, which became the main hub of EverQuest itself, allowing you to zone into most of the classic and Kunark and Velius zones all within itself. It has a library where you can buy spells for every class. It has vendors. It has literally everything you need in the safety bubble of EverQuest. So it definitely took away a big part of the open world component of the game itself, which people love, people hate. It's a very divisive expansion. And I think with that, especially with this emulated server kind of capping off in Planes of Power and sitting in that era and not moving past it, I think people will probably like really enjoy it as a new experience, but a new old experience. I think that's the best way to put it. Like, most people have played Planes of Power. Personally, I've leveled in Planes of Power expansions. I never actually raided in Planes of Power, so it's going to be very novel for me, and I'm really looking forward to that. But I think I'm really looking forward to it, especially on my shaman, just getting some, like, I don't know, Plane of Time gear, like, just, it's like a fantasy I have now. Like, I'm creating a fantasy. I'm looking forward to this. Like, it's going to cap at Planes of Power, so it's still going to have that museum-like atmosphere that Project 1999 has, which will be pretty... I think it's like a good, healthy dynamic for a server to be in. You're not always racing to the next thing. But right now, Korm is in that state of looking forward to these new things. And I think there's something special in that for how you play the game. Like, just knowing that there's more on the horizon. I think that's nice. Very active population. The peaks, most days are around 1,200 people. There's tons of guilds. I joined a guild called Hardened Casuals. Shout out. Super nice guild. Super nice folks. There's also XP bonuses for being in a group. So it definitely incentivizes grouping with others for better progression, which is huge. And there's some small and big quality of life changes as well on Project Korm. And I think a big one is instance rating. As I discussed for Project 1999, there's no instance rating, so it's very difficult to kind of get those components for the epics that you want, or just getting raid gear in general, especially in the higher end raids. So for Korm, you're gonna get a chance to do all of that if you want to do that. That's kind of the end of my discussion for like the most social way to play EverQuest. I think if I were to choose, or if I were to rank it from like best way to play EverQuest to worst way to play EverQuest within the lens of the social aspect, I'm not saying that any of these are better than any other just by the game itself, the designs. I think that's a completely different video in and of itself to talk about, but just through the social aspect of it, through the accessibility to play with other people, the accessibility to, join a guild and make some friends in EverQuest, I think number one is going to be Project Korm. Number two is going to be Teak for now, the Timelock progression, but definitely has a more limited scope. I think number three is going to be Project 1999. It has a very solid player base. Definitely a great choice. All three of these are great choices to get into EverQuest and to just meet some new folks, honestly. Number four, I'm going to go with EverQuest Live. I think there's good opportunities to join casual family guilds early on, but I think it's very difficult. There's a very high barrier of entry to go and actually make lasting connections without feeling like you're just being power leveled by people. Mercenaries make the game even easier to not socialize because you have this bot that's overpowered until like level 70, just doing everything for you. So not the best choice. Live EverQuest is where it starts to be like, do the first 3 if you want to play for the social aspect. And lastly, with number 5, I'm gonna go with Project Lazarus. It's fun, but it's mostly like playing EverQuest like a single player game, and that's fun for what it is if that's what you're looking for. But for me, playing EverQuest, I always get that itch to just group with real people, you know. It only, for me personally, it only goes so far to play EverQuest or any MMO in just a single player way. Like I'll just play a single player game if I want to play like in this play style. I want to play a game that's actually designed to be a single player game. And I think Project Lazarus gets close to being actually designed to be a single player way to play EverQuest, but it's still within the skeleton system of being an MMO. So if that's what you're into, go for it. You'll have a good time. It's a very friendly community. And I do want to emphasize just a final point in this video. EverQuest is just such a beautiful game because no matter how you play it, it is going to have the heart of EverQuest, which is based on just helping people, you know, just being a part of this community that you're trying to see all your fellow players get better gear for the most part if it's not too toxic. It's such a niche MMO to begin with. Like, I kind of forget how small this game is compared to all these other games. Like, it's just a little minnow in the pond. And I think there's just something so special about that. And it makes me love the game even more because it's just like, man, people who play EverQuest, we found something good here. And I think that's something to celebrate. I think that's something to be appreciative of, and like, you know, we're EverQuest players, man. Let's go. So anyways, I hope you have a fantastic day. We're pushing to 1,000 subscribers. We're at over 900 right now, which is insane. So if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I make EverQuest videos just talking about random shit related to EverQuest. So if you like listening to stuff like this in the background, hit that subscribe button. Also hit the like button if you like the video. If you disliked it, hit that dislike button. Let me know in the comments what you think. What's your best, most social way of playing EverQuest? Do you play EverQuest for the social aspect or a different way? I think most people probably play it for the social aspect. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. It's almost been a half hour of me blabbing on about EverQuest. So have an excellent day. Peace.